Hello and welcome to episode 125 of Spatial Realities, your podcast for all professionals involved in XR, spatial computing, and the metaverse. My name is Thomas Riedel, host of the podcast and tech journalist from Cologne, Germany. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host Thomas Bedenk, one of the most experienced XR experts in Berlin. Greetings.
Thanks, and hello, Thomas.
Hello. And in this episode, our, as I said, 125th one, we go way back to our roots. It was in episode 1 when I asked, what is the metaverse? 5 years later, the news about the metaverse is rolling in, so it's time to talk about it again. Please welcome the CEO and co-founder of RP1 and board member of the Metaverse Standards Forum, Mann. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Thomas, and Thomas, right? Thomas Square.
Yeah.
So the news broke last week, and of course, it absolutely grabbed my attention. It was the Metaverse Standards Forum, was in collaboration with the tech company RP1, launching the Open Metaverse Browser Initiative, short OMBI. And one of the goals of this open source project is to create a functional foundation for a metaverse browser that enables seamless, interoperable access to spatial 3D content. A lot of things we have to chew here. Sean, maybe you can elaborate a little bit about that.
Well, we've been spending about the last 5 years building out technology with the idea of the metaverse. We started off with scaling technology that no one else has been able to solve. And so if you think about, going into virtual spaces or whatnot, you're kind of stuck to about 20 to 30 people. If you take away the VR or the spatial audio or the 6DoF, you can get to maybe in the hundreds, but it's very limited. And we solved a hard software problem that no one else has done. And we can scale to the world's population fully uncharted, meaning that everyone is connected at all times, anywhere they go. And when we started that company with that technology, we realized through demos that we're actually building the construct of the very first metaverse browser. And we built a prototype. And we recognized that after building the prototype, this shouldn't be in the hands of any one company. It should be an open standard for the world to use, so that you can create what we call an open metaverse. And we'll get into that term in a little bit, I'm sure. But we decided to partner with Metaverse Standards Forum and create the OMB Alliance or initiative, excuse me. And the purpose is to bring that prototype, which is using a good portion of the web stack, but is very limited. And we need to build what is called a native version of that metaverse browser, one that you install and you're not limited by some of the web stack. And we're going to do that under the Metaverse Standard Forum.
So you just mentioned everyone could be connected. How do you mean that? Simultaneously? I remember like 4 years ago or something like that, when you were talking about like 4,000 concurrent users or something like that in the backend, or if I remember correctly, something like that. What do you mean if you say everyone can be connected?
Yeah, I think that the challenge with computing is once you add a handful of users, the software can't scale to a certain number of users. So we're stuck in being snow globes. You know what I mean? So I'm sure you've heard about like Fortnite having a concert with like 10 million people, but it wasn't really 10 million people together. It was a shard or an instance of about 100 people or so. And it was kind of randomized on who you can be with. But once you're in a shard, I can't leave that shard and join somebody else in their experience. And so you're very segmented or fragmented in these types of experiences. And the big view of the metaverse, especially from like Snow Crash, is that just like on planet Earth, we're connected everywhere. In fact, we're connected here. I'm in Los Angeles. You guys are in Germany, and yet we're connected. I don't have to worry about that you're in some instance where we can't speak because there's already a certain number of users or it's very fragmented. And so the whole idea of the metaverse was that we can be seamlessly connected to unlimited virtual spaces and experiences in the real world that we share together. And in fact, there was an article, quite a few years ago that was talking about, well, that grand vision is not possible because hardware doesn't enable that type of scale. And we raised our hand saying we've solved it from a software standpoint. But that was just one important piece of the bigger picture. Once we realized, as we started demoing this type of scale, the light bulb went off. And we realized that there was going to need new open standards for everyone to be able to participate and not be stuck inside of platforms. I call it the AOL moment of the metaverse or the current XR industry, where we're stuck in platforms. And I think there's the one best example I can give you is HoloLens. Think about it. Lots of companies have bought HoloLens and bought into the ecosystem, the software ecosystem, the device, and they used it and they believed in it. And all of a sudden, Microsoft said, this is not a path we want to go down any further. And guess what? They lost the millions of dollars in time that they invested because it was a closed ecosystem. And open standards, if you think about the World Wide Web, you don't have that problem. Hospitals, hotels, the entire world runs on web infrastructure. And you don't have to worry about what device, or you know how to build towards a general software ecosystem that will across the entire World Wide Web. That doesn't really exist for the XR industry, and it's needed for us to truly create an open metaverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to explore here in technical terms, in terms of what the metaverse is, the recent news and all that. Maybe we start a little further back with you. How did you get here, and why is RP1 involved in making it an open standard? Like, how do you benefit as a company? But maybe start first with where you're coming from, why you're in this kind of tech
in the
area.
XR realm.
Yeah, I've been in tech my entire life, and I guess everyone has a superpower. My superpower is recognizing technologies that have a fit in the real world. Whether a lot of engineers and amazing people create these unbelievable discoveries, right? Whether in software and hardware or whatnot, but they have a very hard time getting it to the world and really expanding it. And that's always been my capability. And so I met a good friend and now a co-founder of RP1, and he worked at Full Tilt Poker. He was actually the head architect of $1 billion poker company, and his sole job was to figure out how do you connect 100,000 concurrent poker players, which is a really hard problem to solve. In fact, most companies, they sought out to do that, they failed miserably. They get to 50, 100, 200, 300 users, and then the system just cannot scale any more users in that instance, and they're forced to basically create new instances for the next set of users. And he was able to solve it. And when he semi-retired very successfully, he looked back and wished he did his architecture very differently. And he builds everything from scratch, from the bottom, and really understand what is needed, and then figure out software-wise how to solve it. And he started tinkering with software. And when he was done about 2 to 3 years worth of tinkering, he ended up unlocking software that fully opened up what a CPU can do. Think about like taking hardware to a whole nother level. And I'll give you his outcome. His outcome is you needed typically about 1,000 computers to handle 100,000 poker players. 1,000 computers. So think of a data center with 1,000 computers stacked. And when he was finished with this software, he could do the exact same 100,000 users on 1/10 of one server. Imagine running $1 billion company on literally just one server. And when we learned about the metaverse, and just like you all, we talked about it, it was all over the news. And the big thing was you need billions of people to connect in real time for there to be this big metaverse. And everyone was like, well, we can only put 20 people right now in Horizons or all these limited platforms. So we're probably about 20 to 30 years away from hardware enabling this big picture. And my partner was like, well, I've solved that problem. I can scale not only on a single server, but I can connect as many servers as needed where it's completely uncharted, where I can connect the world to these types of experiences. And that's when RP1 was born. And so we started the company. And the first thing you got to do is demo it, right? You got to prove out, if Meta and all these big billion-dollar companies can only do, 20 people in an instance, well, we got to prove it. So we built a demo, and the demo kind of solved a couple things. One is we solved, putting an enormous amount of people. We can capable of about 100,000 right now on about 30 computers, and we can scale that. We can keep buying computers. But I figured 100,000 versus 20 is a big enough proof point that we solved something, right? But we also solved this big map system, right? So how do you connect like the world in a singular persistent map, which we'll get into with AR glasses, why that's important. And once we got these themes, we were building up the tech company, we realized that this was much bigger than just scale. And if you don't solve these open standards, these are going to be the things that are needed to actually create the evolution of the World Wide Web, which I refer to as the metaverse. And those things, I think we took it a step further because you can't think about just virtual reality. You also have to think about the future of AR glasses. And, AR glasses is deemed to be the next mobile device, the replacement of the mobile phone, where people can call you and instantly be in your view or walk around with you in the real world very seamlessly and experience different things, whether at work or play or traveling, you have the ability to connect to the world in ways that you can't do with websites. And to me, that was like the bigger picture. And so the light bulb went off, and about 2 years ago, we focused purely on building out the construct of how a metaverse browser would work and operate. And we decided then obviously to put that under the MSF umbrella, so the world can actually create the open standard. So that's kind of how we got here today.
And how did you solve that problem? Can you tell us, or is it a secret? Sometimes those things are secrets because they are...
Well, I can't tell you how. We do have some patents and also some secret sauce. And so, but we need to separate things, I think, in this conversation. There's what RP1 will be in the future with our scaling technology. And then there's the Open Metaverse Browser Initiative, which has less to do about the scale. It's more about evolving the current web browser to handle the future of the open metaverse. And so those are two very distinct different things. And I'm happy to go down both paths. I think they're both equally important, but I think the most important is the open standards. And so you have to think about, why are we creating a metaverse browser when we can just add to the current web browser? I think that's probably the most important question that we get all the time. And we know this because we built a global prototype using the current web stack, including WebXR. And I think the biggest thing that people may not realize what the future is going to be comprised of is hundreds of millions of real-time services. And what I mean by that, a service is a piece of software, real-time or not, that sits anywhere in the world on any server that you're going to be able to need to interact with. And so let me give you a great example. If you think of like an airport's going to build their own version of a website, which we call a spatial fabric, which will be the new standard for a spatial website. And they're going to anchor services all over that spatial fabric. So think of it like a map that has your digital twin, and then you're going to have real-time pieces of software that you're going to interact with as you move around that space. And so you may be, if you're an employee of the airport, there may be a service on the tarmac that, with your AR glasses will tell you where to stand and where to direct the airlines, the airplane to the appropriate gates. You may have it in baggage claim where it makes sure that the right baggage gets to the right, a belt going to the right airlines. As a consumer, when you walk into the airport, you're going to connect to a real-time service that enables you to interact with the airport. It'll greet you like an AI NPC will say, "Welcome to Frankfurt, airport." And then it's going to say, "Hey, can I help you check your bags? It's right over here." And then it'll say, "Your gate is this way. Let me help you check in." And then, "Would you like a burger? I can order that for you right now and have it ready for you before your plane takes off." These are going to be services that are built by anyone in the world. And the browser's job is to connect you to all these servers and all these services running on these spatial fabrics. And the current web is not designed to do that. And so that's where the aha moments of building a metaverse browser, which would be the evolution of the web browser, is needed for the open standards around the open metaverse.
And just to be clear, there is already an open metaverse browser, or you're going to develop it?
So we have a global prototype at rp1.com. And so it's hard because I think it's one of the best and worst demos, because if you go in there with not understanding the technology, it just looks like another platform. But if you actually understand what's happening, you'll understand that each of these pieces of technology are the construct of what the next browser needs to be, both on the AR and the VR side. And from any device, by the way, it works on mobile and desktop. But we're going to be taking this vision, some of the technologies and the architecture, and building a native version of it under the Metaverse Standards Forum. And what I mean by native, right now we're using WebXR, but again, WebXR is extremely limited. We've pushed the limits of what the web stack can handle. A native browser you build outside of the pieces of the web stack. So the two biggest problems in the web stack is the DOM, and I don't know if we want to get overly technical, and iframes. And so this is a way in fact, it is designed to completely segment single experiences from each other. And where the metaverse is going to be connecting hundreds, if not thousands, of services all in real time. And so we're going to be forking a browser technology outside of the DOM and iframes and creating a new version of the browser, which we call a metaverse browser. And so that's going to be done over the next 9 to 12 months with the Metaverse Standards Forum.
When you talk about DOM and iframe, you're talking about the rendering part of the browser, right? And,
it's the rendering and also the security part. It's how it segments experiences from each other. And so it doesn't allow for
it's encapsulate from one location to the other, right? That's what you mean.
Exactly. And if you think about the experience I did with the airport, imagine there's 3 different services, whether a baggage claim service or someone greets me or an employee is using something. Those services can all coexist with each other but be completely securitized by the people that own and run those services. And that's a very important thing where the current web browser wouldn't enable those services to coexist with each other in a single scene.
So why I'm asking is because I'm just wondering where are the, like, what's the scope when you talk about the browser? Is it still based on TCP/IP? Is it, you know, because it's real time on the one hand, you know, what protocols are you using? Where is the browser starting, right? Is it the rendering part of it? Is it the networking as well? So can you distinct a little bit to what's part of this browser and what other elements you need to make it work in real time?
Well, the good news is we're not looking to throw out the entire web stack, right? I mean, TCP/IP and UDP and all these things work absolutely amazing for the metaverse. And I think there's just a handful of components where we have to fork and solve the problems for connecting real-time services to spatial fabrics. The different differentiator to a metaverse browser versus a web browser is a couple of things. One is current web browsers are not proximity based. You know, they don't know where you're at in the real world. So if I'm standing in front of an airport or a McDonald's or a Walmart or something like that, it needs to know I'm near a spatial fabric and connect me to that spatial fabric. So it's going to need what is called a VPS, virtual positioning system, that knows exactly where we're located and connect us to the content based on my proximity. And if I'm coming virtually, I just need to go there, right? I just need to go to that, actual address and be able to see the same experience as well. And so you need these types of VPS system that's built into the browser. The second thing is the browser needs a rendering engine, and it doesn't need a full gaming system. Again, we're going away from the monolithic gaming engines where you're stuck in a closed software ecosystem. We're talking about a general rendering engine. And so the job of a metaverse browser is to connect to anyone's spatial fabric, render it, know where you're standing in that space, and connect you to services that are anchored in that space. That's very different than serving up, 2D HTML web pages. And so we're taking kind of what a browser's job is. And if you think about a browser's job is, it's to be instant, so it solves the friction. It's to give ownership to every participant. So everyone that has their location, Walmart has to own their space and run, their back end, their front end, how they connect to customers and employees. They have to own and operate all that data. In fact, that's a non-negotiable. They have, just like their web infrastructure, they have to be able to build this in their own IT departments, run on their own servers. And this entire project enables that to be possible today versus it being in platforms like the Horizons or Roblox or all these other companies that are trying to kind of force enterprises into closed ecosystems.
And you're just using the normal DNS system, or because you have to register it somewhere, right?
Yep, we're working on the DNS. I can foresee that there's newer ways to solve some of those issues, but I think current DNS works just fine. I think people can go to an actual location, and once you're in a metaverse browser, it knows that you're just standing in this big map system. So as you walk around, it's just connecting to different spatial fabrics. It's very different than kind of typing in. Now, if you're virtual, then you would have to go ahead and find that location, right? So you'd be like, I want to go to Walmart at this location, and it'll take me there. And if someone's there in the real world and we're in a public map, we can see each other instantly and share the same services at those locations.
Okay, so you have the rendering of the objects, you have the proximity-based recognition of users and objects and where you are. That, of course, already starts to tackle a problem that's not there in the traditional web browser. Like you're already dealing with privacy data, basically, when you're
Correct.
directly locating someone. How are you tackling this when you say it's supposed to be the open standard, everyone uses, that's your goal, I assume, everyone uses this kind of stack to do metaverse platforms or of their own then, or applications or services of their own. So how is this privacy first in terms of keeping information private to the user, but also being able to connect everyone? Which is one thing that's often, the issue when you talk about, how Meta wants to create a metaverse, right? They want to have all of your data, basically.
That's also a very German question, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I think privacy is at a lot of different layers. There's like the hardware layer, the software layer, where data sits, all that type of stuff. I think the most important thing, and it kind of goes back to my answer to the last question, is really where does data sit, right? And how do you get connected to that data? And the job of the browser is to be kind of like Switzerland, like agnostic, right? Like my job is to connect to a spatial fabric, display it for the user, and that data still sits on your servers, right? So like when a Chrome goes to Amazon.com, Amazon has all their servers sitting wherever they want to sit, whether with AWS, I'm assuming, and you would just serve up whatever you see coming from their servers. It just becomes a display, if you will. And so a metaverse browser would operate very similar. You would have your own metaverse servers that contain your own spatial fabrics, and you have all the data of your your digital twin, all the users that are there. That all resides on your own servers. The metaverse browser is just displaying it and connecting users to be able to, I guess the biggest step is to immerse themselves in the environment, so to be able to walk around and interact, and that's really the sole job of the browser. And so it really creates an agnostic partner that is not owning your data. It doesn't sit in the browser level, no different than your website doesn't sit inside Chrome or Safari, and it just displays it. From a hardware perspective, I mean, that's really up to the hardware providers to create how they want to deal with privacy, in dealing with the hardware, because that's another step that you go through. For the browser, again, it's a way for it to be separated. Where instead of you being forced to use software that is closed on that device, once you connect to the browser, you now have an unlimited amount of services that you can interact with, and you can pick and choose the companies that you trust the most or have provided certain feature sets that you want to interact with versus others. And I think the important thing about an open ecosystem is the power of choice, right? That consumers and businesses can choose the types of partners, the different technology providers that are out there that provide the best safety or best services that they can trust at a holistic level.
So if you're saying this all is like proximity based, either on the real world, or I assume there would also be a virtual world layer, whatever, then the user would still be in control in picking which services they want to access or allow at the current location, rather than being served everything or being directly fed by the whatever is there. Right.
Yep. So when you open up Chrome, and I think using the current web stack is the best example to answer a lot of these questions. If you look at Chrome, when I go to a website, I can pick and choose which website I go to. I can pick and choose the things that I want to interact at that website. So if there's a chat room and I'm like, no, I don't want to chat, I don't have to go there, right? I don't have to use it. And so the power is always in the user of the actual browser. The experiences are controlled by the people. So if you go to Disneyland and if you don't want to be a part of Disneyland or interact with Disneyland, you have the choice to leave or not be there or not be interacting with what Disneyland wants to present. But the information is there if you want it. And so the choice is definitely for the user of the browser. And there also be, just like you have public and private websites, there'll be public and private metaverse experiences, right? That you think about like a university. When you go into a classroom, I don't think anyone should be allowed to just go into a classroom unless you're an actual student or a university professor that's running that class. And so those are things that the spatial fabric owner can choose how they want to run their environment. And that's the best thing about an open standard is, remember, a spatial fabric sits on your servers. What happens on that spatial fabric is completely up to you. And so the user can choose to interact with that spatial fabric or not. And I think that's a really important step to address some of the concerns you're bringing up.
Yeah. And we're going totally to the technical right now, which is typical when Thomas gets hooked by something, then he starts asking all the interesting technical questions. I love it. And we also have to talk about what is the metaverse and all that stuff in a moment. But that's something which is very interesting, all the technical stuff, because that's what makes or breaks things, right? Usually there are technical challenges we have to solve. And I'm wondering, where is sitting that spatial fabric? Who owns that? How is it distributed? Somehow I have feelings like Web3, and everybody is probably just clinching a little bit, because unfortunately there was a Web 3.0 which was a good idea, and then we had the time which was Web 3.0 without the dot in between, which everything destroyed everything and was just a Trojan horse, right? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit about that spatial layer.
If I understood you right, that's what we kind of just tackled with this multi-origin composition. Like you can pick when you're at a certain location, and then you just pick which services you're interested in, or which are you allowing. You're served with the options based on proximity, right? At least that's how I understood it so far.
Yeah, so let's simplify and just let's try to create a parallel to what we know today with the World Wide Web, right? So with the World Wide Web, if you want people to connect to your information, you create a website, right? And so in the metaverse, you're going to create what's called a spatial fabric. And it's just a fancy term for the evolution of a website. It's a proximity-based spatial 3D space that you can now do either digital twins or gamify or any type of content people want to interact with in a 3D space. And so it's just an evolution of websites. And so if you guys wanted to build your own spatial fabric to run this podcast in person and have this really cool thing, you'd build your own spatial fabric like you'd build a website. You'd figure out what the 3D environment looks like, and you'd build all those assets and you put it on your own server, or maybe a hosting company will provide those services just like they do for the web. And then you would put it out on the Open Metaverse, and people would be able to use a Metaverse browser to connect to your space and instantly be able to interact with whatever environment that you've created. And so it gives you full ownership. You create all the services that you will interact with. So if you want to greet people, you may want to have an NPC, a non-player character AI, greet you and say, "Hey, welcome to this podcast. You should sit over here." Well, that's a service that you can either build yourself, or there'll be companies out there that provide those services that you connect to. So you're going to take that service and anchor it on your spatial fabric wherever you want people to interact with it. And that service will know your environment because it's spatially aware, and it will know where the seating is or where you get a nice drink or whatever you want them to do in your space. And so you own and operate that entire thing. You own the data, you own the conversations, you own everything that happens, just like you own your own website. And the Metaverse browser is just to connect anyone in the world from any device to that content without having to download and install the experience. It's just all in real time. And more importantly, it enables you to go from one experience. So when I'm done with your cool podcast, I can head over to my job in a conference room, or I can go play a game with my kids, or I can go to a university and take a class. I'm connected to everything. Just like when I open up Chrome, I'm connected to hundreds of millions of websites to do whatever I like.
And this location is not owned by anybody because it's on the metaverse layer. And I could theoretically start a spatial fabric at RP1's office in Los Angeles, for example.
Good question. Yep. So I see where you're going. And so, okay, so there's a couple of components. And this is where remember I told you we should separate the open standards that we're creating versus what service RP1 provides in the future. And so when you build your spatial fabric, the browser can go directly to your spatial fabric. But you also may want to be connected to a universal spatial fabric that provides a large map system that makes it easy for people to traverse multiple spatial fabrics. And so you may want to attach your spatial fabric, and we've created an unlimited map system that you can connect to. And so imagine on planet Earth, 1-to-1 scale, the only people that can attach their spatial fabric are the people that actually own the space in the real world. So your house, your business, Walmart, university, airports, they're the only ones that have the rights to that actual XYZ coordinate space. And so they can attach their spatial fabric at that location. And this is really important for the future of AR glasses, because as I'm walking around with AR glasses, I need to be connected to a massive digital twin of planet Earth, and it knows where I'm walking at any given moment and connect me to different services, owned and operated by different companies that I can interact with. And so RP1 can become a service provider to those services, because it's really hard to scale, right? And so if you want people to connect to your spatial fabric, you can choose to use RP1, or you can do it completely on your own. You can get other services. Maybe there's other competitors in this space that will provide these types of services so that you can scale and connect to the different services that exist on your spatial fabric. So you have that option. And so RP1 just becomes a service provider in the bigger ecosystem once the native browser is created.
And how does my browser know that this spatial fabric is owned by you, and only you can put a spatial fabric in the real world layer? Like there, somebody needs to control that. You have to verify that I'm the owner and stuff like that. So that's probably something where we have to use the fax machine again.
Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. And that's actually a great question. I mean, for now, we are a company that's just less than 10 people. And so for us to be able to control or moderate that type of thing is really difficult. So right now, with our global prototype, it's on the honor system. At some point, there will be a team of people. Their sole job is to make sure that people are not taking ownership of things that they don't own. So let's say you have a house and your other Thomas here is like, no, that's my house. At some point, you're both are going to have to produce who has ownership, and that will be in a proof of a deed of a home or whatnot. And then whoever wants will actually get access to that site, and that will be not disputed. And so I think there will be eventually AI that will help with that, where documents can be pushed in, because this is, again, a huge thing, right? So I believe when you sell your house, you're going to sell the digital rights to that house as well on that deed, so that when the new house owner comes in, they're going to be able to create their own spatial fabrics in that same house and connect to all the services of running their washing machine and their dryer and their toaster oven, their pool lights. I mean, your entire house is going to be spatialized, and that will run on your private spatial fabric. And you have to have the rights to that spatial fabric in a global map system. And so you're right, that needs to be tackled, but that'll be a combination of AI and people and paperwork that needs to be submitted and whatnot.
Sounds like a problem we want to have in the future. And when we have that problem, we're going to solve it somehow and hopefully do it for the best of society. So that, let's say it like from the European perspective, not an American company is owning that layer. If you understand what I mean.
I think that should be global. It's not just a European. I mean, you're talking about the entire world. And I think everyone that owns their space and their rights, and there's different rules and regulations about governments, and that those places are going to have to regulate how they manage and operate these types of spaces. And so these are things that all need to be tackled. I mean, I love to say we've tackled every single component of the next layer for the entire spatial internet. But we're creating the really hardcore necessary technologies that allow everyone to, or I shouldn't even say allow, enable the world to start building and not be controlled by any one set. But I think these are things that need to be solved along the way. And you're 100% right. There's different rules and regulations on how people want to operate, and those need to be taken into consideration.
And I guess using or going AR first is also clever because, let's say, the visual information is not that heavy. You can actually take care about the infrastructure in the first place. Are there plans to do it like in, you already mentioned it, Snow Crash, where the metaverse actually consists of virtual reality experiences which are connected to each other? Because that's, for example, let's say the real version or the full version, or however you want to know it, the full immersive version of what one might want to understand under the metaverse,
Well, you're skipping because you want to get to the definition of the metaverse. And I agree with you. It is all things. And so it's not just one or the other. It's the grand vision of all these pieces coming together. And it's kind of like if I were to create a website and go around telling the world I just invented the World Wide Web, you would laugh at me, right? Because it's just one component of this massive ecosystem that the world is using to connect to each other, with social or business or commerce or whatever the case may be is. And so the metaverse is the evolution of the World Wide Web. And under that umbrella is going to be all the things that we're talking about. The future of AR glasses, where I can easily connect to services and 3D spatial information as I move around the real world, but it also will connect endless amount of virtual spaces as well. And so it's, in fact, our prototype does that today. I mean, we have an entire digital twin of our entire solar system, 1-to-1 scale. And we have different people and individuals that have built their own spatial fabrics. And just by going near it, you're instantly pulling the visual data from their servers. And it's absolutely magical. I mean, if you going back to Snow Crash, if you're truly talking about the experience where I can create a avatar and traverse unlimited spaces, we can do that today at scale. And not only that, we can show you how you can join someone in the real world virtually. So the whole goal is, in the metaverse, is that just sitting at the comfort of your, wherever you want to be in the world, I can put a VR headset on or a desktop or mobile and join someone in the real world, and they'll see me with their AR glasses as they're walking around. And so not is it just connecting virtual spaces, but it's connecting the real world as well. So it's really up to you and the experiences and how you navigate the metaverse. But all of these experiences would be under the umbrella.
Really like that metaphor of starting the web as a very simple website, and maybe AR is that simple website. We didn't start the website with Flash. with Macromedia Flash, right? So we had to start somewhere, and it was just text, and then there were suddenly pictures, and then suddenly the pictures could move, and then it evolved and so on. And we have now JavaScript and all the things in the internet, which are very complicated. And I really like that, and I totally understand that vision, to be honest. And that's something we probably would have not thought about 5 years ago, that we would start with AR. Of course, back then we had the imagination we would start with what we already had, which was VR headsets. But we had them too early, one could say, and we're probably going the wrong way to start with it. I find that very interesting. And
I don't think VR was necessarily too early. I think it was misunderstood on who uses VR and at what scale. Like, I think, when Meta came out with VR headsets, they went really heavy into gaming, right? And if you look at gaming, just look at the industry. Look at PlayStations and Xboxes. Did you really expect them to sell more headsets than people buying PlayStations and Xboxes to get connected to a gaming ecosystem, right? And I think AR is going to make VR extremely important, right? And I'm not saying it's not important today. I think VR connects us in ways that you can't do through 2D, and I'm a big advocate for VR. But when you can connect to people in the real world, whether you're a loved one or let's say there's a birthday party and I can't be there in real life, but now I can throw a VR headset on and actually feel like I'm in your home, and I can see all the individuals there, and they're interacting with me as close as if I was there in reality. That might be the most powerful thing you can do within the metaverse. And I think right now, there's a lot of negativity around the metaverse because people see it from like social VR. And so again, I'm going to go back to my same thing with the web. It's like me building a game and saying, oh, I just invented the World Wide Web. And I'm like, no, that's a game that runs in the World Wide Web. No different than I think social VR will be a place that you can go to in the metaverse, but that doesn't mean it is the metaverse, right? And so I think all these different experiences, again, are under the umbrella of an open metaverse. And it's just a matter of what type of experience you're looking for. And I think when you go outside of gaming and VR can join you, whether in your work or just think about it at Chick-fil-A. Let's say someone is on the stove and they're having a problem, and some VP can put a VR headset on and actually go right next to that person working and saying, hey, what's the problem? Well, I'm having an issue with this or something like that. All right, I'll send someone over there. It creates a way for us to connect with each other that would be fairly impossible with the current web stack. And so that's the power of the metaverse. It brings us together in a way as close to reality as possible. It's not just about gaming or social or work. It's really all those things combined.
So when we talk about the World Wide Web, of course, it originated a lot more open than it is now, at least for most of the users. They're going through mostly social networks or Google or Facebook, right? Even though the backbone is still decentralized and is still independent to some extent. So taking this to the same level, like it is with the what right now with the metaverse, what makes you think that the open standard will beat the efforts to have these enclosed platforms? If we talk about Meta, we can also talk about Roblox and Fortnite, of course. But why do you think the open alternative will have a chance in competing at the current state?
Well, I first want to state every company you just mentioned is absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm sure people out there and say I hate Meta or I do this for different reasons, but you know what? They're pioneering and showing the world what's possible. They might not be doing it in the best way or the right path. We can go into deep dive on kind of the strategies and the mistakes that they've made. I think they're quite obvious, which I find always kind of funny because if you're putting that much money behind it, I think these are things that you could easily have seen and kind of avoided. But they also showed the world on how to connect with each other. If you look at kids in Roblox, a way to participate and connect with your friends after school in a fun environment is really neat, and it proves out their success with kids. But it also has their challenges. But I think to answer your question, it's really going back to history. And if you look at, AOL was the Meta back in the day before kind of the web browser became popular. And, they were, billions of dollars. They had a closed ecosystem. In fact, you kind of asked anyone what the internet was. They were like, oh, it's AOL, right? I just use AOL and I'm connected to the internet, and that's the internet, right? And then someone comes along and builds a web browser. And the power, and I think you just got to look at the facts of what makes things happen. And when you have a closed ecosystem where no one can participate and someone controls the experience, there's no way for them to compete with the world building something together. It's impossible. And AOL recognized that. It took about 6 years after the web browser was created for tools and different things to really be created, where eventually it was much bigger and better than anything you can do in AOL. And AOL was like, at that point, we can't compete. And so eventually they had a slow death where eventually everyone migrated to these open ecosystems because businesses, they knew they couldn't build inside of AOL. Airports, hospitals, you have all these different sensitive data. It was just not possible. And so the web browser won because of these types of non-negotiables that exist that we just understand. You know what I mean? It's almost just out of nature, right? And I think right now you're having the same moment where everyone's racing to build this closed ecosystem. But I believe that, again, all these enterprises, they will not build their spatial environments until they can own and operate and run those things on their own servers and have full control of that ecosystem. And so it's not going to be about Meta telling the world what they can do. If all of a sudden these large organizations that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of employees, if they're going to buy AR glasses, they're going to say, we can only buy these glasses if they comply with these open standards where we own our data. And if you go out of business, I can easily move it to another AR glass manufacturer. I have to have that ecosystem because you can't shut down a hotel or an airport or a hospital because one company goes out of business or decides that's not a focus of theirs. And look at today.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Meta with Horizons, look at Altspace, 8th Wall. Right now, we are in the AOL phase because everything is controlled by these fragmented, primary like walled garden companies. The open standards will work because that's the only way people are going to buy into these headsets. And so at some point, the hardware manufacturers are going to have to recognize this. But the good thing is, there is a huge demand for this. I mean, HoloLens was, if you ask any enterprise to use HoloLens, they would say it 100% added a massive amount of value to running their organizations. And so they're just not going to make that choice again, right? They're in proof of concept purgatory, I call right now, where all these companies want to buy headsets, but they can't until they can own and operate their own ecosystem. And I think that's why the open standards will prevail, is because it's needed. It's needed to make this ecosystem actually succeed.
And that's the right time to point everyone to the news who haven't heard about it. Meta Horizon Worlds will close down for virtual reality, but not so much. Some of the experiences will stay alive because there were a lot of people actually being very angry, I guess. One of them was, by the way, Dr. Ruth Diaz, who posted something on LinkedIn, which was very impressive because she has literally hundreds of different experiences running on Horizon Worlds, which are not just some fun things she's doing there, which could easily be erased. It was actually some scientific stuff, some stuff for people who actually needs that. And that's another impressive story of what happens when you trust a proprietary offering of a company like a Meta. They just shut it down and then it's gone. And I guess that's why we also need an open approach. I guess that's without any question. Like, I want to tell my AI to build my spatial fabric, right?
Exactly.
I want to feed the data, like this is how you do it, and then I want to tell the AI how I want to do it. Like, I do it already with anti-gravity and Gemini, to be honest. I'm building websites right now with that setup and WordPress plugins and vibe code, everything I want. And I just want to tell my AI that I want that, and then it's suddenly there, using my hosting service I booked and everything like that. And I feel that's not too far away. How much time do I need until I can do that actually?
Well, you could do that right now with our prototype. So, I mean, we have people building AI tools to build out your own spatial fabrics. You have the ability to attach it to RP1. It's not going to have a lot of, action and environment, like things that you can do. You can't attach your own services because, again, WebXR is very limiting. We do have sample services to show you how that works. But once the native browser is built, we believe that's going to take about 9 to 12 months or so. Then it's going to open up the full-fledged open ecosystem, and where any service you can go out and grab and put on your spatial fabric, and instantly a browser will connect to it from anywhere and any device. And it's funny you brought up Ruth, and I I feel bad for Horizons. I understand the mistakes they made. And I think anyone to think that when they build in a closed ecosystem that this is not possible is a little bit silly, especially when you see Altspace shut down. I feel really bad because these are hardcore people. Like this is their friend groups. These are things that you do and meet up with people. And to take that away is taking away things that you do on a daily basis. And I can feel for Ruth at the highest level. And that's actually what's really has pushed us to build open standards or bring this under the Metaverse Standards Forum, because that should never happen again. And so when you build your spatial fabric, I'm very hopeful there'll be not just one, but multiple metaverse browsers. And so if a metaverse browser was to go defunct, there's always going to be a metaverse browser out there that can easily connect to your spatial fabric, the people that you want to interact with and hanging out. So and you own all those assets. So it's not like it disappears. You're not building towards this closed ecosystem. So everything you just described is actually helping push the idea of why we need these open standards and building out your spatial fabrics. And so I want to tell Ruth, don't do it for a third time in another closed ecosystem. Start building in open standard spatial fabrics and know that never can be taken away from her. In fact, not only will it not be taken away from her, but she'll own the entire experience.
But there is another side to it, because even if you build on an open standard, it doesn't mean this standard will be adopted by the general public, right? It could be outdated, or a competing standard could win over the whole thing, and then you have a similar problem, because there won't be any users there. There won't be future compatible browsers if it's not what is dominating the market, basically, or the tech stack people agree on, right?
I guess the question is, what will be the HTML of the metaverse, right?
Yeah. I think you both bring up a good question. And Thomas, to answer your question, you're right. Those should be concerns. And it's actually one of the biggest reasons why we moved all of this technology in the prototype under the Metaverse Standards Forum. And this was, it's not about us building it by ourselves. It's actually inviting the world to build it. When you invite the world to build it, I believe you have, look at, when the first browser or the web browser was built, people are like, that's amazing. And then they built competing browsers, but it was all built on standards that continue to grow, because creating a new one from scratch or 0 to 1 is extremely difficult, as you mentioned. I don't believe anyone else is doing what we're doing. I think people think about browsers potentially just for virtual spaces. They're solving it in a lot of different ways, but they're not thinking about the bigger picture and how this actually comes into AR glasses. And I think you have to build it, but by inviting all the SDOs, all the standard development organizations to actually join in building the different components, including the W3C, including the Kronos group. There's all these amazing standards that exist that will work amazing with the Metaverse Browser project. And so I think if you invite the world to help build it, the world's going to protect its new baby, because it knows the importance of this type of project. And yes, is it possible some company provides a new, complete different standard? Maybe, but it would take a lot of work and a huge amount of ecosystem to build out to make that possible. So I don't fear that's going to be a big issue. I think the what we're doing under the Metaverse Standards Forum helps really ensure that by joining everyone together and building it, that this will be an ecosystem we can all start using.
Yeah, it would be wonderful if we came to an agreement on an open standard that meets the requirements and makes the experience people want possible on the other hand, right? Because that's sometimes the other part of technology, in the end, the user experience has to be right. The things that users want to experience have to be technically possible. So, if the standard is built right, if it's adopted around the world, then that's fantastic news, right?
Yep.
So this initiative is based on OpenXR and GLTF for 3D assets. And at the same time, we have the Open Alliance for USD, for example, who are also trying something. They're not building a browser per se, but they're, of course, also working on something which will be like everywhere. And you can see that with even Google joining them. They're working on GLTF very hard, and that's the way they went in the past. So how do you bring that together? Because for me, I have sometimes the hope that working on different things doesn't mean that we're working against each other. So how do you see that thing? Is that a dangerous thing for you? How do you manage what they are doing? Because, of course, Apple will bring out their own AR glass or AI glass, whatever it will be next year. probably heavily using USD, trying to push their standards. So how is it going with them?
Yeah, I think, like I said, our job right now is to educate the world on even what a metaverse browser is. I think some people, just from true nomenclature, they'll say, "Well, a web browser is a web browser. There's no other browser." One would argue, and so I think you first need to educate everyone on the project and really what it's solving for, and then it's an invitation on solving all the different components. When you think about a browser versus pre-compiled apps, so right now the future of AR or AR today, they're thinking that you're going to have to download an app every 3 feet that you walk, right? So I'm going to have to download and install an app, and I can interact with just that app with a limited number of people if the other person has the same app. And then I can walk another steps to another place and I have to do it, rinse and repeat. And that's going to be an awful experience. I mean, I can see why they're doing that today, because they're just replicating the mobile phone ecosystem is the easiest right now, and then it'll continue to evolve. But we already understand that's going to be.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong. USD is trying to solve that by not downloading an app, but having a file which you download, which contains all the information of that experience.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. So USD is when you build out your spatial fabric, USD can actually be an unbelievable scene assembler, right? And so again, this is not reinventing. In fact, the browser doesn't even control those standards. You would create whoever has a standard that solves for streamable experiences is the most important thing. So you have to set the standards of what you're solving for first. So we're not downloading and installing an experience before we interact with it. This is all real time. This is what makes the Metaverse browser special, is that it removes all the friction. And so if everyone understands that we're removing the friction, you have an amount of information you can send back and forth, from the server to a client anywhere in the world. You need to solve for that problem. USD is an amazing scene assembler. And I believe the output of a USD scene will be in GLTF that can go on your spatial fabric that will stream very easily. And if USD eventually becomes easily streamable, they can also compete. But it's not about the browser picking and choosing who's a winner and who's a loser. It's about the world can solve the problems for the Open Metaverse browser, as long as they're solving for the problems that with spatial fabrics and streaming that type of content. And so it's not about us making those choices. It's about inviting the world to bring their solutions. And guess what? It's actually your choice building out a spatial fabric. When you build out a website, I think you have a lot of options, right? You can go ahead and use CSS. You can use you can go to Squarespace or Wix or Canva or use AI tools today. There's a myriad of ways to build out your website, and you can pick and choose what you want to use. And there's many standards that you can use across websites. And I think the same thing will be true for spatial fabrics. And so our goal is to invite the world, including NVIDIA and USD, to actually join in actually building for spatial fabrics. In fact, I believe they'll be heavily interested in what we're doing and get involved, because I could see them being an amazing scene assembler and really organizing and arranging your entire scene, like a Walmart or an airport, all the type of stuff, and then convert it into GLTF and then have that stream in real time from any device would actually work really, really well. So I think these are all being taken into consideration. And again, it's not a decision on us. It's really to invite the world to create these. And maybe there's new standards that are created, Thomas, right? I mean, it's like here's what exists today, but they're going to say, wait a minute, we can get Unreal level graphics if we do X, Y, and Z to a new file type. And there'll be a new file type that comes up. As long as it conforms to the standards and what is needed for this ecosystem that we've talked about for the last hour, I think everyone's invited to add to that ecosystem equally.
That's one thing I wanted to tackle, because it's not just getting this browser in the hands of people, it's also on the developer, and there are very established ways of creating game-like experiences, 3D experiences, right? Most of them either WebXR based or coming out of game engines, basically, depending on what you're targeting, what your goals are. And there are so many different multi-user services, right? In real-time networking, asynchronous, and whatever you want. Right now, it's many different engines and third-party providers competing, basically. How will you get how do you see that happen, that someone can deploy towards the standard? Do you think the engines will adopt it? Will there be an own authoring system? Is it just a standard to be targeted, or what do you see happening there?
Okay, that's a really, really good question. And I think right now the world is stuck in monolithic gaming engines, right? So if you pick Unity or Unreal or you pick something, but they're all radically very different. And the idea that I can work in one and put it to somewhere else really does not exist. And I think the whole idea of services, and we can go a little bit deeper on that, services could be a game, right? So if I built a game of chess, if I'm a programmer, I'm going to pick whatever language I want to build that game of chess. And to be honest with you, with the Metaverse browser, we don't care what language you build that service in. We created an API. We call it a NSO right now, Network Service Objects, that you can basically, it's a way for you to take a service, a game or anything that you want to do, no matter what language it's built on, and create a connective point where it's seamless for me to grab your service, drop it into my environment in real time. And the users will not be able to see what language it's written in. They're just going to instantly connect to the service, the visuals, and the programming, and be able to instantly interact with that. So let me give you a great example. This is actually really, really cool. So imagine you're both wearing AR glasses, and you're right now next to each other in the real world. And I'm right now in California, and I'm going to put my VR headset on, and I go to right where you're standing. We can go ahead and grab a chess game built by anyone in the world on an open marketplace, put that chess game right on your table. That's a service. And we will instantly be able to start playing chess. Instantly. There's no installs. All of us will see the chessboard. We'll all be able to interact with it, and it will all work seamless. That is what the Metaverse browser is capable of doing. You're able to grab any service built by anyone in the world and instantly connect to it in your environment, whether virtually or in the real world, and be able to interact with it. And it doesn't matter what that service, what language it's built in. I think the challenge that you're going to bring up is probably when you're thinking about Fortnite level games, low latency, really like rich AAA type gaming. And I'll be honest with you, that's not a big solve for us out of the gates. I mean, I think there's an environment for that. The challenge with low latency games and the idea of the metaverse is that we need to be, if we want to be competitive, we have to be equidistant to the server, right? You can't have 5 people in LA and 1 person in Japan connecting to a server in LA, because the person in Japan would have that latency problem. They would have a disadvantage in that game. And there's tricks to try to solve, that kind of competitiveness, but it still is a problem, right? And that's why you have Fortnite servers that kind of group people in regions that are closest to servers so they can have that experience. And so we're not really focused on that. We're focused more on the bigger picture. I think gaming is like 5% of kind of the bigger picture of what the metaverse can do, as far as running and operating every single, home and store and office and everything imaginable. But I know it's a big part of it. And so the turn-based gaming and simple gaming and circuses or Disneylands and all this kind of stuff, all doable with the metaverse that we've described. I do believe that with the Fortnite issue, you'll probably go to a Fortnite lobby in the metaverse. And then when you want to go play, it'll then put you out on a server that you're equidistant to people. But when you're done, it puts you back in the lobby, and then now you're connected to the Open Metaverse and can now go to a university or something. So there's ways to solve that, but it's not necessarily what we're trying to accomplish right out of the gates. I think what we can do with services are far more powerful.
And maybe there will be a service included in Fortnite in the future where you can, for example, communicate with somebody while you're playing Fortnite or something like that. Or playing chess while you are in Fortnite. You have your chessboard hovering next to you, shooting people, and then you make your move, and I'm shooting at somebody else, and then I will put some figure over there and win the game in chess. Something like that. So that would be possible.
This is all possible. I love your imagination, and it's completely all possible. And the good thing is we don't have to build all that. We just need to enable the world to decide what experiences they like or don't like, and you can create them. And that's the power of an open ecosystem, is that you can design any experience, own and operate it, and if the world loves it, they'll come to you. You don't have to worry about an algorithm telling you what's the top 3 places to go to in Fortnite or in Roblox, and that's the only way you're going to get seen. You now have an open ecosystem where you can kind of lobby your experiences, and people can just instantly go there without having to. I mean, this is one of the biggest thing we haven't talked about is the friction. I mean, think about it. If you were like, hey, Sean, I built this cool thing like you just described in Roblox. You should come check it out. And I'm like, well, I don't use Roblox. And I'm like, okay, so I need to download and install Roblox. I need to create an account, create an avatar, learn the user design on how to find even your space. And that's just to get to your experience. Whereas with an Open Metaverse browser, I just click a link and I'm instantly in your space interacting with whatever services you have there. It is literally like the web on steroids. I mean, that's what the metaverse is going to be. It's going to be so amazing to connect to these different experiences and not have any friction. And if you want the masses to join, you have to remove the friction. It has to be as simple as clicking a button. I mean, if you look at the World Wide Web, that's why the browser was so powerful, is because you literally, once someone can open up a browser and learn how to put a URL in, They can go anywhere. I mean, any grandma, grandfather, even 10-year-old kids, they can surf the web like it's absolutely nothing. But in this day, we have way too much friction. So you're going to get the gaming population, but you're not going to get the world to join. And I think the Metaverse browser removes all that friction. And so the world can actually start building for all these AR glasses and things. It's going to be, I mean, it's magical. I can see it because I've been thinking about this for years. But it's not dystopian because just the idea that someone can call me and I'm not staring at a 5-inch screen as I'm walking around. In fact, we just did a hackathon and I had to find the building in San Fran. And it was so funny because these light bulb moments just go off all day long. It's like I go to Google Maps, it knows I'm walking, and I say I need to get to this building. So guess what? I have to keep looking down, looking up, looking down. I need to know which way I'm directing. I'm turning my cell phone in all these different directions. And I'm like, man, if I just had AR glasses, I took them out of my pocket just like I took my phone out of my pocket and I just put them on, it's going to know exactly where I'm looking, where I'm standing, and it's actually going to show me that I make a right turn right here, and I don't have to look down. I'm involved in my environment. To me, that's just magical. Like it's just going to make it easier for me. And when I'm done with the metaverse, I can just take my glasses off, put it in my pocket, just like when I'm done with my phone, it goes in my pocket anyway. It's not like I'm going to walk around all day long with my glasses on, no different than I don't walk around all day long with my phone attached to my ear. It just enables me when I'm ready to connect to these experiences or information or anything imaginable, it's at my fingertips.
It's great to and easy to tell how passionate you are about all these things. I mean, both of us are equally passionate. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But it's fascinating how you're pushing for it, and it's a relatively small company that you have, right? And but coming back to RP1, like what is it that's driving you? Like, what's your vision, and how is it working business-wise, right? How is this coming together for RP1 as a business? After we talked so much about the hopefully open standards and all that, I think that is something we can go a little deeper on, and especially tackling your excitement, because I just read this blog article from Neil Stevenson saying, like how he was wrong, everyone will have a phone in 20 years and no one will be doing what they thought with a VR set in their face, basically. So he basically gave up. It doesn't sound like you gave up. So what's the vision for RP1?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. And if you were to ask me 5 years ago that I'm building the first set of open standards to create the open metaverse, I would have laughed in your face like it was absolutely the biggest joke that you just said. Like, I'm like, there's no chance this is happening. And it's funny now, 5.5 years into this journey, it's like we're building literally the first set of open standards to create the open metaverse. And I think where Neil gets it wrong, and again, I don't want to knock Neil. He created Snow Crash. I think he took and by the way, it wasn't just all Neil's idea. He took ideas from lots of engineers and lots of amazing.
He just gave it a name, basically.
He gave it a name and brought it together in a story that really brought it to light, right? And I think it's always with books, so whoever's the first to write about something, even though it's being discussed in the underground, I think gets the credit. But I think the credit is some really powerful engineers that had these concepts for quite some time, and he was able to encapsulate it in an amazing book that really brought this discussion. But I think that the sad part about the metaverse, to be honest with you, is just gone so heavily into virtual reality and not understanding the bigger picture. And I think if you look at the power of AR glasses, I think then it really starts coming to vision. And I think AR glasses was really that moment that will make the idea of the metaverse understandable. And it will also give a much bigger reason for virtual reality. And so if you look at it through the lens of no AR glasses and what that future looks like, I can see why it's bleak, because think about it. Meta said, here's Quest 3s. Everyone should buy them. Everyone's going to want to interact and stay in these virtual environments 24/7. And very quickly, the answer was no. People don't want to be in these environments and stick a helmet on my face for 24/7. But it might be cool for gaming. It might be cool for this and this, but it's very novel, right? And I think a lot of the demonstrations in these virtual headsets is displaying 2D information in a 3D way. which again is the coolest thing. When you put on a Vision Pro and you see this thing floating in the middle of the air, you're like, this is the coolest thing. But then manipulating and using it, you eventually kind of put it down, you go back to your laptop, because a laptop is designed to interact with 2D things way better than virtual things, virtual devices, virtual hardware. But if you start thinking about when we can actually be spatially aware of our environments and how it can interact with the real world and how it can bring people together in the next level of the World Wide Web, then you're going to be like, aha, okay, now I get why the metaverse is going to be extremely powerful. So I think if you have a very small lens and just virtual reality, I can see why people are getting tired of the narrative, because that's been around for 30 years, right? I mean, this is not the first time talking about virtual reality. But if you look around, and this is the evidence, this is not a Google Glass moment. This is not, the cardboard moment. This is not. You have a lot of major tech companies racing to build commercially viable AR glasses. And you have quotes from Tim Cook saying that the vast majority of everyone on the planet will interact with AR in the upcoming years. In fact, this could be the biggest threat to the iPhone. And so when you start hearing quotes like that, and you start seeing companies that are racing to build these AR glasses, the hard thing is just to imagine it, right? Because think about the day when the mobile phone was introduced. Everyone was like, there's no way I'm carrying a mobile phone around with me. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We got landlines, we got phone booths. Like, why do I need to carry around a mobile device with me? In fact, do Google it. It's hilarious on famous people that really, stuck their flag in saying this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And now every single person has a mobile phone connected to them 24/7. In fact, even when the internet was created, they're like, why do we need web pages in the internet? This is the silliest thing. And they just couldn't comprehend how it can bring people together. And AR glasses is that thing.
I totally subscribe to this vision of AR pushing things forward. On the other hand, it took quite a while for VR to get where it is, and I think it will take quite a while for AR to get to that place that you're describing, right? Because if we look at the current hardware, even what Meta is doing right now, what Apple is doing, what Snap is doing, it's not quite there yet in terms of form factor, in terms of 3D capability. Especially if you talk about a visual metaverse, right, on top of the real world. So what's your take, just as a quick estimate? What's your take? When are we there? Like Thomas's glasses that he's wearing right now, when that it's full 3D AR.
You're going to see the next year true AR glasses, full 6 DoF, spatial audio, connecting to things. In fact, I just used one. I was on Capitol Hill because we're working with the government to get behind the standards of the new browser, and I got to experience one of the new AR glasses that are coming out soon, and it worked on our demo perfectly. I literally not only could see services instantly with no installs, but someone on a laptop opened up their laptop, clicked our demo, went to the location, and instantly the person with the AR glasses could see that person coming from their laptop, and it all worked.
Which one was it?
It was a demo, and I can demo this to you guys after the podcast. In fact, the AR demo is something that we can't do on our website. Someone has to have a Quest 3, and I have to invite you to give you a special link, but I'm happy to show you. It's magical. I just literally show up wherever you are, and there's like a movie, or you can control the lights, all in real time, no installs, one click. It's absolutely the most magical thing. And when you see that, I think you're going to be like, okay, I can start seeing this is going to come together. You are right, though. AR glasses has a handful of things to solve, right? Having that much compute on your face. The good thing is it's going to be in a puck version. There's going to be something you put in your pocket that attaches to the glasses. So the compute's going to be in your pocket versus on your face. The glasses are close. I mean, I've used a couple of the glasses, one from Meta, one from Xreal, and a couple other companies, and they're all racing to solve these problems. And it's going to be, I think in the next year or so, you're going to start seeing commercially viable AR glasses. And I believe they will get smaller and smaller over a 3 to 5 year period of time. And so I think it's a perfect timing for us. Timing couldn't be better, because it's going to take us about a year to finish the first version of a native browser that will work with these AR glasses and in virtual spaces and whatnot. And so the timing is perfect for all these manufacturers to work together, because I would say Most of these AR glass manufacturers don't have billions of dollars to create their own siloed software ecosystem like Meta is trying to do. And so the browser actually democratizes this entire industry, because now whoever builds a better glass, they're instantly going to be connected to an open software ecosystem that anyone can start building. And so I believe this is going to help the race happen a lot faster. And so our goal is to make sure the enterprises know what's happening, make sure that the AR glasses have an option to join with the Open Metaverse Browser. And you're talking about in the next couple of years, we're going to have AR glasses in enterprises, and then eventually those enterprises will trickle down to consumers over the next 3 to 5 years or so.
I guess one thing what we see right now is that it is not trickling down from enterprise, because people are actually buying it just to have fun with it. Like all the AI glasses from Meta, for example, we have 10 million glasses sold just to people who are having fun with it, and not because it's a great enterprise device. And what we're seeing, I think, and this is where I totally buy that idea, that AR glasses might be a new entrance into the metaverse space.
Yeah.
There will be a couple of glasses which will be successful with just being normal consumer devices. Like we will see one from Snap, for example. We will see one from Xreal, which will use Android XR, which is already announced, and also other glasses which will just be great glasses. And of course they won't have a battery for all day use. They only will have a battery for half day use, maybe in 2 years, but that's already a lot. And you won't have the world full of spatial websites, of spatial fabrics, but a couple of them. So it's probably enough what they can do, and then it will grow. And I totally buy it. To be honest, I will put this into my AI presentation I will have tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, at an AI conference about AI glasses. I will talk about AI glasses, and I'm totally buying that vision, and I find that very interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, so I think what you're describing obviously is the first iteration of like smart glasses, right? And so glasses, and I think if you look at Meta, it makes a lot of sense because they run a lot of social platforms. And so if you have an easy way to connect to those social platforms with a camera, with a voice, connect to your phone or something like that, you're basically training the world to start using glasses. I love what they're doing, and I do believe it's a good consumer device for connectivity. There's a lot of challenges there because you are stuck in their AI system. Right. So you're stuck using whatever software is hard code built to the technology. And this is just the start. These are not AR glasses. Let's be really clear. Two separate things, I believe. And I think they were smart. They're saying, hey, look, AR glasses is a couple years away. Let's build out smart glasses so kids and people can start using and get used to taking phone calls. Whether it's just voice right now, I can see things in front of me and I can start interacting with the software. You have to start training, and I wouldn't say training, but introducing these technologies and having environments. No different than the Vision Pro when it was created. It was a laptop replacement, and they went in early, and everyone's like, it was a failure. I'm like, it wasn't a failure. It was getting the people to start giving feedback and how this could become eventually a laptop replacement. The only way to do that is to start creating an ecosystem where you get feedback from all the developers and users and whatnot. Same thing with the smart glasses. I think smart glasses is a way to start building the form factors, be able to make money along the way, selling these devices. And then eventually those devices are going to be full powered AR glasses, which is about, like I said, about a year away. You have like Project Orion, you have Xreal, you have a lot of companies that are also building the full-fledged AR glasses. And that's when enterprises are going to come into play, is because they already have full demand for the AR glasses. I know this, if you look at any airport, we've met with a lot of different airports of this, they're all building closed platform apps because they still want to be spatially aware. But once this is full-fledged, they're going to dive right in because it saves them money, training, robots, AI. But the most powerful thing about the Metaverse browser we haven't talked about is that you get to choose which AI you get to interact with. You're not stuck with what the hardware device has told you must use, because when you connect to the browser, you can have any AI companion, you can have any AI assistant or AI pets or things as you move around, and you can also connect to any AI that spatial fabrics decide to use. So it creates, again, that open ecosystem where everyone picks and chooses the software that they want to interact with. And without the Metaverse browser, and this is why I'm hoping the world's going to root for us, or at least join us in building this, is because they're not going to have a say in what happens in these AR glasses. And that's where you go run into the privacy issues and the data ownership and all these things. And so this is where I'm hoping that everyone's going to join us and not just watch us. I mean, I think they were watching us when we were RP1, but now that we put all this under Metaverse Standards Forum and it's not going to be controlled by any one company, my thing is join the Metaverse Standards Forum and you can contribute. You can become a part of the working groups. You can be at other SDOs that also can bring their technologies for these open standards. And you're going to see people start becoming the WordPress of this open ecosystem. To invite the world to start building, I believe they will show, because there's lots of money to be made in creating services and tools and everything imaginable that you couldn't do under Roblox or Meta Horizons and whatnot.
I mean, there are so many of these companies that you just described that are solving hard problems in AR context, right? Like Snap, yes. For example. They had it on their dev blog for the eye connect, like super low latency 6DoF synchronization. Just by looking at someone else's glasses, basically, they can localize them and make it really a solid connection between those shared glasses. And that's not necessarily, that's just an example. There are many of those issues and many of those things that need to be solved to make it frictionless and seamless between the users, right? And it's not all going to be tackled by the browser, the software layer. So there's still a lot of, reasons for companies like Snap to do it or not do it in terms of integrating with the browser, because they might say, it's not compatible with the frictionless experience that we want to create, or whatever other reasoning they have, So I think it would be wonderful if everyone came together and did this. But the biggest one of them, they want to also keep pushing their unique angle on it, right? So how do you see this working out?
Yeah, no, I love where your mind goes, and it's something I think about all the time. So you're spot on the challenges, and it's like I like to look at the current cell phone ecosystem. Imagine if I built a cell phone and it only worked with the people that have that exact same cell phone. I could only call you if you actually only have an iPhone, but if you have an Android or any other company, I can't connect to them. That would be awful, right? And I think we need to understand that without any open standards, everyone is just trying to figure it out. Right. I mean, I don't think everyone's purposely, I don't think it's Snap's job necessarily to build an open ecosystem. Neither is it Meta. Someone has to. Right. And it just so happens that we're at the forefront of driving this narrative. But without an open ecosystem, everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, create a closed ecosystem where they can monetize as much as they can through their devices. But at some point, once there's an open ecosystem, I believe the first AR glass company that embraces it is actually going to be the winner. Because if they embrace it and build tooling, so they become the WordPress of this open ecosystem, and it drives people to their AR glasses because it works the best with this open ecosystem, and everyone can start building and enjoying this and taking advantage of it, they're going to be at the forefront. And so, if anyone waits, good for them. I believe they'll be, last place as far as getting things that, and I'm not just trying to push the narrative. I just truly believe that without this open ecosystem, how you're going to invite the masses to join and actually buy these headsets. And I do believe Snap is going a different direction. They're going, they have a lot of kids that use Snapchat. And so this is another device that they can interact in to think. But I think once they can see kids can join each other and have fun with a lot of their spatial services and whatnot, we're helping solve their technical challenges. I mean, to create this entire ecosystem on your own is really, really hard. And you can see that with the current iterations of their AR glasses. And so I think they're going to embrace and say, wait a minute, we don't have to build the entire software ecosystem, and we can start building proprietary services, and they can start using our glasses and be at the forefront. And it works really well with Snapchat. I think it's going to be a no-brainer for their executives to join once they understand the complexity. No different than any other AR manufacturer. And that may sound kind of funny, but I really, truly believe that, not just because I want to see it work. I'm putting myself as an executive in their position, and I know how hard it is. Look, Meta spent $60 billion to try to create a closed software ecosystem and failed miserably. And so if you think Snap is going to want to go in those footsteps, or any other glass manufacturer to go in the same footsteps, I find that I'm hopeful that they're going to learn from the mistakes of what people have done over the last handful of years. And when they see what the open ecosystem can do, I believe they're going to embrace it faster than they would creating their own thing. There's just nothing to embrace right now. And I think we're just starting that narrative. And so obviously with podcasts like this, we can get the messaging out, but hopefully executives at Snap are listening. And same thing with Meta. I want to see all these guys succeed because they are solving some of the hard challenges and have spent a lot of money to do this. Now compete equally with each other so that consumers and enterprises get the best products, the best experiences, and the best ownership as you can for an open ecosystem.
I do now have a little bit of fear of missing out, to be honest, but I guess that's also induced and absolutely what you want to do with us here, and it's fine. I guess we have to have visions like that and think about it and work on it, and that's one of my last questions for today, because we are already getting late here, late for us here in Germany. Your day just started in LA. You're sitting in LA over there, and that's awesome. Is like how to participate. You had one hackathon you just told us about. I thought the hackathon will be soon, but maybe you will have another hackathon soon, because I love hackathons. I organize hackathons by myself, and I do know how great they are to learn about technology, how to develop experiences which have never been seen before, and bring something out of zero. So what's your plan there?
Yeah, what's funny? I can tell the entire audience 100%. I did not ask you to ask this, and I don't know how you knew this, but we just did our hackathon. We did it with a lot of the major VR, like the XR Guild, the XRA, the Kronos Group, the Metaverse Standards Forum, Pico. They all sponsored it. We just had it at the Frontier Tower in San Francisco, and it was absolutely amazing. We put it together in less than 3 weeks. Imagine putting an entire hackathon in less than 3 weeks. We had about over 480 signed up, and we just had both in person and remote. And it was absolutely amazing. And it was great because people are just educating themselves on the space. You can imagine all the questions you're asking. I'm sure you're still going to walk away having lots of questions that you have. And it basically enables people to start learning about why these are needed, what it is, and how they can start actually participating, because it actually gives them an invite to become the WordPress. Like, this is actually an invitation to become the next $1 billion company on open standards. Just like how, someone back in the day said, wait a minute, this website thing's going to be a pretty big deal. Someone's going to need tools. I'm going to be that guy. And now, WordPress, 20, 30 years later is multi-billions of dollars. It's that inflection point today. And so funny enough, when we finished it, the entire team was like, not only was that good, but when were we doing the next one? There's no reason to not keep doing these, where they get access to the people that are actually building these open standards. We can educate them on the entire project, give them hints and ways that they can experience it. But the cool thing is they're not building for a closed company that's going to profit off of whatever they build. You're actually helping other people create companies and services and things for the open metaverse. And so we're actually looking to do one in the next couple of months. And so there's a couple ways to participate to answer your question. Number one is, you go to rp1.com, scroll to the bottom, and join our Discord. Our Discord is a great way to get connected to the RP1 team, whether you want to help invest in the open standards, if you want to invest in RP1 as a company, you want to create tools, you have questions, you have anything, you get access to our entire team, go to our Discord. The second thing is, go join the Metaverse Standards Forum. And you go to the Metaverse Standard Forum. It is free to join. If you want to be a principal member that actually has a voice in creating some of the standards, there is a price, but that's really to help mitigate, having too many chefs in the kitchen, and have really important companies that are building these devices to have an understanding of what it is, so it impacts their devices, so they can actually join and actually be a seat at the table. You can also join any of your local SDOs, whether it's the W3C or the Kronos Group, and they're all going to be able to contribute towards this open standard project as well. And so by joining, but the best thing is actually educate yourself. We created an unbelievable document. You can go to omb.wiki. So Open Metaverse Browser, omb.wiki. And right on that page, you're going to see a document that you can click. It's about a 30-page document. If you don't want to read 30 pages, totally fine. There's a 3-page, executive summary. But it really breaks down. I'm sorry?
There's also AI.
Yeah, there's also AI. But it's actually going to tell you why a metaverse browser. It goes into what part of the web stack currently doesn't work, how we're still going to embrace a lot of the web standards, how people can get involved, why the enterprises need this. It really breaks down everything that we kind of discussed over the last hour and 20 minutes or so, but really gives you a definitive understanding of the project, the importance, and the implications. And in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to have another technical document that's going to go out that's going to go a little bit deeper dive into the rendering engine, the VPS, all the different components of the Metaverse browser, so people can really understand the problems that they're solving and how they can contribute. And so those are the best ways. In fact, we are doing a live Q&A, 2 of them this Wednesday, tomorrow, at the Metaverse Standards Forum. And we're going to do that the next week and the week after. So if you join the Metaverse for free, you'll get the invites and you'll have a full live Q&A where if people read the document, they can come in and ask questions and do deeper dives and really go into the technical weeds and whatnot. So they can start figuring out how they can participate and bring their expertise to the table. And so, again, this is inviting the entire world to join. We want the enterprises. We want the Disneys of the world because we can unlock things for companies like Disney that has never been considered further. Let me just give you just a small glimpse.
Since you're saying that, so there are over 2,000 people part of the Metaverse Standard Forum, but like you said, there are more, a fewer selected influential ones, the pay members, and who will actually be pushing on this front in terms of the member companies? Is it RP1 building this browser, or is it multiple companies building the browser?
So RP1 is bringing our architectural understanding and the standards that we created with spatial fabrics and bringing all that under the Metaverse Standard Forum, and will actually help architect the native version of that prototype. And we're going to invite, we're going to be bringing in hopefully capital from lots of companies and individuals where we can hire some engineers and a couple of people with different pieces of expertise. And then we're also going to push out some of the problems all to the SDOs and to other working groups. And everyone can contribute towards the architecture of the native browser. RP1 will be, my co-founder will be the head architect and help actually bring all these pieces together. But it's going to be amongst a lot of amazing people with expertises in all the different layers that'll be out there. And this will be built in the open as well. I mean, the architecture will be shared. It'll be on an open GitHub. People will see the construction. It's actually going to be brilliant on how this is all being built. But again, it's hard to have a million chefs trying to build the same thing. So we got to get to version 1 as quickly as possible. So it's going to be mirroring kind of what you see in our prototype, but creating it in a way that is securitized and ready to be used as our version of HTML1, right? And then eventually the browser is going to continue to get better and better with more and more features, just like how the early web browser came out. And so that's the goal. But I do want to share. I kid you not, I got to use Disney because Disney's on the top of my mind. I want to disclose that we're not working with them, but would like to. And but I can see why this would impact them. And now you can see how this would be across every company in the world. So if you look at Disney parks, how do you connect all of your employees to services that help you manage that park? You could do it in apps, but eventually they're going to be wearing AR glasses, whether you're at the churros cart, helping make sure that you do all the 4 steps correctly to deliver the perfect churro, or the ability for me to find where the haunted mansion is. An AI can come up and instantly walk me. Maybe it's R2-D2 or Darth Vader will help walk me to a location. While I'm sitting in those 2-hour lines, there's going to be game-specific cool things that you can interact with that's different for each ride, or different themes that you can interact with, whether as a group or individual in those spaces. And all you have to do is have a device connect to the browser. You can whip up your mobile phone or this, and it'll instantly know that you're standing in Disneyland, because they'll build a digital twin on their own servers that they manage and run their own data. They'll put all the services they want all over the park that their employees and consumers can connect to. But here's another crazy thing. They can build a digital twin of the entire Star Wars galaxy. And they're not limited on map size. They can put that all in their own servers. And you and I can instantly go to the Star Wars galaxy, be a character, interact with all the services that Disneyland does as full gamified. But as soon as I'm done with that interaction, and I had an absolute blast, and I go there all the time and meet friends there and have communities and all that kind of stuff, I can leave and go take a class at Stanford University. And then I have to now do a meeting over at a conference room. The browser connects you to the world of an unlimited imagination, whether it's in the real world or fictitious things that are outside the real world that you instantly can connect to as one single or many personas. You create one avatar, maybe for business, one for play. You can interchange and instantly connect to anyone, and there's zero friction. And so imagine this across the entire world. It is going to be magical. And it's funny, we're all focused on Meta and them failing on selling another 10 million headsets, all this kind of stuff. But I don't think people can really see how we connect as individuals. And I also want to lend back to that Disney example. Imagine my friend that couldn't join us can throw his VR headset on and instantly go right next to us and walk around for 2 hours and experience all the things that we're experiencing together. To me, that's what brings the world together. And that's when people are going to be like, okay, I understand what the metaverse is and how it's going to impact my life. that's the vision that we all dream together, because it's going to make it better. It's not going to augment it. And to me, that's the best thing. And
I mean, this is some passion we actually miss in Germany. So thank you very much for sharing that passion. This is really, really impressive. And you actually sold that very, very good, that vision. I'm absolutely convinced now that we will do something with augmented reality here and with the upcoming glasses. No idea if they replace anything, or if we will soon walk around together in Disneyland, although I'm not there. We will see that, but that's the fun part. We are just beginning. We're just getting started with all that, and we can be there and be part of that. And we will actually do that also with spatial realities. We will check you out, of course. We will keep informed about what's going on at RP1, of course, also as Open Metaverse Browser Initiative. We're gonna keep you updated, and yeah, it would be great to talk to you again in a year or 3. No matter how things develop, it will be great to look back and reflect about that, because that's what keeps us running, going back and figuring out what's going on. If I just can tell that we started the Metaverse podcast, it was called back then, 5 years ago, and I would have not imagined being here after 5 years doing this and talking about a form of metaverse which might happen over AR glasses in the first place. We have been all surprised about the AI glasses, or for example mixed reality, and all the things. It is totally unpredictable, and that's why it's so much fun doing the job we're doing. So yeah, thank you very much for joining. Sean Mann, co-founder and CEO at RP1, and also he is the board member of the Metaverse Standards Forum. You should all check everything out Sean was just talking about. You will find the links, of course, in the show notes. And yeah, Thomas, shall we wrap up the podcast?
Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And it's your turn.
Oh,
again.
You switched around. Okay. And that was episode 125 of Spatial Realities.
If you enjoyed this podcast, we'll really appreciate if you recommended it to others. Feel free to share the episodes on social media, send them to colleagues and friends, and leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, a quick reminder about our Discord server. You can find a link to it in the show notes or at spatialrealities.de.
My name is Thomas Bedenk.
I'm Thomas Riedel.
Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.
See you.
Bye.
Sean?
Awesome, guys.
You have to say bye.
Thank you, Thomas Squared. If it weren't for you guys doing this podcast, the metaverse would never be here. So thank you so much.